really important conversation. It's a conversation that's about helping our children and youth in coming out of COVID. It's a conversation about recognition and opportunities for our field of after-school summer or youth serving organizations. And it's a conversation about how we shape what programming for young people in our state looks like, for the years to come. Throughout COVID, so many of you, when I look out at all your faces on the screen, so many of you have stepped up in so many ways this past year plus, from childcare for essential workers to some of the only and first summer programs, to open last summer, to working closely with schools and community partners on school reopening and the childcare hubs throughout the fall, to designing virtual programming, to helping with meals, to sending home activity kits and connecting families to resources, to serving meals and food. And I just know I have seen your faces and your activity throughout the state and in your communities, and so appreciate what you're doing. And our work is not over, right? We are at another moment in time where we are being asked to step forward into this space. One of the things that we have held as a statewide community throughout COVID are sort of these three tenets, and one is about staying in the conversation together. So as we move through these next phases, as you encounter challenges, as you come across something, let us know, stay in the conversation, don't get frustrated, speak up, because that's how we shape, right? And that's how we work with policymakers and decision makers and figure out, okay, what do we need to do different? Because everything we've been doing throughout COVID is like doing it for the first time in a lot of ways. Also, we've always been trying to approach everything with that problem-solving headset, right? So it may not look perfect yet, but just like we encourage our young people, like approach it with that, right? And to work from that space. And then also, I do want to encourage you to make noise when you need to, right? So if something is not set up, if there's something that's not working for your community or your program, make that noise, because that has also helped us to grow and learn as a community and as a state, to make sure that children and youth and families are getting what they need.
Can I have those? Those are tight. I'm gonna put them on.
If Christine,
I don't need them. I'm gonna put this on. Can you put them in the orange?
I can't mute her. I don't know if someone else. Oh, thanks, Christine. And then the fourth one I want to add is, and this is really important with some of the information announcements we're going to share, is to be in collaboration with others as a field, and to really, as we think through these changes and this growth, to make sure that we're doing it together and that we don't fall into it's this type of program or that type of program, or it's only school-based or it's only this space, but really that we create something that works all across those spaces. The other group, I will say that that are asking all of us to step up are our youth. I hope many of you will be able to listen to the live stream tomorrow that we're doing. We're doing a virtual youth summit with Governor Scott tomorrow at 1. I'm co-hosting with Commissioner Sarah Squirrel, who is the Commissioner of the Department of Mental Health. And Governor Scott will be on, as well as Secretary Dan French from the Secretary of Education, and Secretary Mike Smith from the Agency of Human Services, and Monica Hutt, who is our Chief Prevention Officer. And we have 24 young people, ages 11 to 19, lined up to speak from all across the state. And thank you to many of you for helping with the recruitment of those young voices. And I was reading this morning through their statements to try to organize the lineup, and over and over and over again, they're asking for just what it is that you do and what your programs offer, right? They're asking for those opportunities to connect. They're asking for those close, safe social spaces to re-engage, right? And to be out in the world again as young people. They're asking for the opportunities for hobbies and interests. They're asking for theater and dance and being able to sing out loud with their friends. And they're trusting all of us and all of you to to help deliver those spaces and help create those places for them. And they're asking very strongly that the recovery is seen as not just a recovery about academic learning, but that it is a recovery about mental health and well-being and their self-advocacy and efficacy as young people. And they're really asking us to be sensitive and tuned into what this year has meant for them and what they have been experiencing. And I know that all of you know that, and I know that you know it really well. But I want to say it, just wanted to say it again and acknowledge that responsibility that we have. We have a number of guests today with us. All three of the congressional offices, Senator Sanders' office, Senator Leahy's office, and Congressman Welch's office are on with us today. Katerina Lysias from Senator Sanders' office is going to speak to us in a little bit. We also have Elisa Stahlberg, who is the Director of the Department of Maternal and Child Health from the Vermont Department of Health, they have been our tremendous and very close partners throughout all of COVID. She is back today for some follow-up and to answer some other questions. But first, I would like to introduce Jen Reinhart, who I've known for many years now, and I've always learned things from Jen. She's the Senior Vice President of Research and Policy with the After School Alliance. And as many of you know, the After School Alliance really are national leaders around the voice for after school and summer and youth serving organizations of all types. Out of DC and across the nation. So I really appreciate Jen being here, and I am going to turn the virtual mic over to her. Thanks, Jen.
Great, thanks for having me. Exciting to be here with all of you. This is an amazing turnout. Like, I love the multiple screens of faces here that we can work our way through and see everybody who's joined us. I'm gonna do that little awkward transition that we do in all of our Zoom meetings, right? Which is switch over to sharing my screen. Try and minimize the amount of time it takes to do that. But wanted to just walk you all through some slides to really help you understand kind of this tremendous opportunity that we have in front of us here today. So it's my job to really share with you what I know about the American Rescue Plan and help, and how it can help ensure that more young people have the essential supports that they need for recovery, right? And that includes after school and summer learning opportunities. And you all can be a big part of helping to make sure that that happens. So really want to arm you with as much information as possible and help you feel empowered and ready to go out and kind of make the case with your local districts for helping ensure that young people have these opportunities that we know they need to learn and grow, especially here as we begin to emerge from the pandemic and young people begin to rebound and regain some of those social, emotional, and academic learning opportunities. Okay, so this is really just a little bit of a recap, right, of what's happened so far. The American Rescue Plan is the latest in a series of COVID relief packages that the Congress passed. So thank you to our senators and to Representative Welch, whose staff are joining us here today. They were critical in helping to make this happen. So tremendous gratitude out to the Congress for the previous relief packages, as well as this most recent rescue plan. This, what you see here is just kind of the first, this started a year ago, basically, right? And terms like ESSER, or the Elementary and Secondary Schools Education Relief Dollars, had never been heard before, right? These are brand new words that came out of that legislation and have now become a little bit more mainstream for many of us in thinking about how to make sure we can access those dollars to help support young people through after school and summer programs. So we had the bill back in March, then we had the follow-up one that happened in December. There were other smaller packages in between, but these were the big ones really that had opportunities for after school and summer. So just wanted to highlight that we've come a long way here, but really the American Rescue Plan is the biggest opportunity to date. So just setting up that context a little bit. For me, when I think about this, I think about kind of the early days of the 21st Century Community Learning Centers program and how that program grew tremendously, right? It started at a program that was literally like $1 million before it got focused more specifically on after school and summer. And within a span of 5 years, it grew to $1 billion. So really tremendous demand for programs, incredible services that were being provided, and again, lots of congressional support that got us to that point. And that's sort of where we are now, right? We have this tremendous opportunity in front of us with the American Rescue Plan to potentially direct up to $30 billion in funding at the national level to after school and summer opportunities. Some of this money is going to be a little bit easier to make happen, right? Because there were specific set-asides that the Congress, in its wisdom, included, but other pieces are going to take some work on our part to make happen because they're more allowable use opportunities. So that's what we want to, again, make sure that everybody's really ready to kind of have that conversation. If we're just based on those set-aside numbers, we could double the number of young people in after-school programs in this country. So not just publicly funded programs, but all of the young people in programs, we could more than double that number. So really want to make sure that we're ready and prepared to have these conversations to help make this happen. All right, so the last slide was really just focused on the education funding, and that's where we're going to spend our time today. But I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge that there are other supports for after school and summer programs also in the American Rescue Plan. So there's child care dollars flowing through your child care agency. In total, there was $39 billion for child care in the legislation that will all across the states. There's also money for AmeriCorps, which of course we know many programs rely on to help with some of your staffing, especially in the summer. And then at the state and local level, there are additional discretionary funds that can be used for a wide range of opportunities, one of which is childcare, which does include school age, so that could be after school and summer opportunities there. So lots of potential here, but again, really want to spend our time digging into the education dollars in particular. So this is the big picture at the national level, and just to help you understand kind of how this will happen, the education dollars will flow largely to school districts directly from your state education agency. But states do retain a percentage of these funds for these specific state set-asides that I've mentioned already, and those were outlined in the legislation. So among those set-asides are 1% for summer, which at the national level equates to a little over $1 billion, roughly equal to the national investment in 21st century. Same thing for after school, another 1% of that state money that goes to after school programs. So again, another sort of equivalent to 21st century. And then there's a 5% set aside for learning recovery, which includes after school and summer, but also extended or expanded day and year. At the local level, districts are also required to set aside 20% of their funding for those learning recovery interventions. And again, that includes after school and summer, as well as extended or expanded day and year. So to get a little more concrete, not to belabor this point too much, right? But just to make this as Vermont specific as we can. So this flow chart, I think, is a good depiction of what's going to happen in Vermont based on the numbers that we have access to from the US Department of Education. So from the table that the department has on their website, Vermont Department of Ed actually today is receiving, so it's no longer will receive. This is happening today, so that's pretty exciting too. So we'll receive approximately $285 million. And then, as I mentioned, the State Department of Ed has kind of two avenues for how those funds are going to flow. One is money goes from the State Department out to school districts. So 90% of that $285 million goes to school districts from your SEA by the Title I formula. And then at the district level, districts keep 20% of that in a special pot of money for these learning loss interventions. And then they have 80% of it that they can use on a long list of activities. So many of the other things that you might imagine that districts will need to kind of rebound from COVID. And then
Jen?
Oh, yes, go ahead.
Just a second. So for Vermont, I think it's 28.5, right? Million? I just want to double check the number.
I have to go back and look. Did I?
Well, in your slide, I think you have it.
Well, that's the portion that would stay at the department, but let me double check the numbers. So
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay,
the total pot is what I was talking
Okay.
about, right?
okay,
Versus what
Got it.
stays at the state education agency.
got it. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, yep, no problem. So yeah, then of the money that stays, that the SEA keeps, so the 10%, 5% of that must, not of that, but 5% of the total, so that's the 14.2 million must be spent on learning loss interventions, and 2.8 on summer activities and 2.8 on after school. So again, tremendous opportunities here. Just to kind of put that in perspective, Vermont receives about $6 million in 21st century community learning centers each year. So you can kind of compare those numbers, right, and recognize that this is really significant growth in the investment in after school and summer that will happen here in the state. But of course, none of this is a given, right? And this is where, especially at the local level, it's really going to take some effort on everyone's part to really make that case. And that's where I want to spend most of our time together today. So just a little bit on the timing, you can see, I just updated this right before we started because we had just found out that SEAs were receiving their dollars today. The US Department of Education is having a summit today. So I think they were trying to coordinate a lot of other activities related to that and get funds out the door quickly. So today is the day that kind of these timelines really kick in. The legislation encourages SEAs to disperse their money out to local education agencies within 60 days. So roughly within 60 days from now, or like by late May, we should see funds flowing from your Vermont Agency of Education out to all of the local school districts. The funds themselves, the legislation says, must be obligated by September of 2023. So like if there are grant awards or other things that are made as part of that, those have to happen by September of 2023. And I think what we can expect is that at a minimum, the funding that's coming through here can support summer of 2021, 22, 23, and then of course the school years in between, right? So next school year and the following school year. But I do think there's potential that some of these dollars could even get stretched longer than that. The Congressional Budget Office has done some estimates where they think some of the services that are funded through this might actually take place as late as like 2028. But a lot of this depends on really how much funding a state is getting, right? And how quickly the dollars can get out to organizations in order to start providing services. So some of the decision makers just want to highlight, of course, as I mentioned already, at the national level, the Department of Education is going to give some direction here. We know they're working on a handbook for state education agencies, which actually might be a little bit more directed at local education agencies from what we've heard most recently. And we've been trying to give them some good examples and some research from this space to help make sure that after school is represented there. As I mentioned, they've got this summit that they're doing this afternoon, and there's also an event happening on Monday that our executive director will be featured at. So the department is moving on their piece of it. And then at the state level, your state education agency will be making this decision on that 5% of the learning intervention money, as well as how to disperse the 1% for after school and the 1% for summer, and likely giving some guidance to local folks around the learning recovery dollars that they have to use. And then of course, at the local level, local districts will ultimately decide how these dollars are spent. And so that's, again, where these conversations with your local school district leaders are going to be so important. Okay, so to that point, right, the biggest thing we need to keep in mind here is that just because the funding can be spent on after school and summer in many instances doesn't mean that it will. So it's really up to us as a field to reach out to our local education leaders, so that's school boards, superintendents, it's principals, to really be able to make the case and ask for funding to support kids and families through these high quality after school and summer programs that you all have been providing throughout the pandemic, and that we know you stand ready to provide here as we're emerging from the pandemic. So I want to give you just some ideas to help you highlight the value of partnering with after school programs that can help you stand out maybe from others who might be having these same conversations with local districts, right? You can imagine There might be some of the larger like national tutoring companies, for example, who might be approaching local education agencies and saying, here's our evidence of success. You know, we've got this evaluation that we did. We served this many kids across the country, whatever that is. There are going to be people, sometimes people who have never worked in Vermont, right, who are going to start showing up because they're going to see this as an opportunity to really access funding to help young people. But still, we think the best way to help young people is to look to community organizations that have a long history within your communities, right? That are trusted allies for young people and for families, and who are really well positioned to both recognize the needs of young people and families and also to meet those needs. So we want to make sure that all of you who have been in your communities and have been doing this work are ready to really have those conversations, so that we make sure that the dollars, you know, flow wisely and are well spent and really do benefit young people. So these are just a few points that we think are worth you thinking about as you're going in to have these conversations. So we'll just dig a little bit into what each one of those could look like. I'm not going to talk through the details of this. This is just to spur your thinking a little bit. But I think approaching these conversations from a mindset of like, we're here to help you, right? And together we can help young people is the way to go into the conversation. So it's not so much like, here's what we need out of this, but here's what we can offer, right? So this is how school districts would benefit from partnering with summer and after school programs, again, to help address learning loss. And you can see, and Holly touched on many of these things even in her opening, right? The wide variety of supports, the fact that you've all been here for kids throughout the pandemic, and are ready, you know, to jump in and play this role going forward. Highlighting again, as I mentioned, kind of this fact that you've been here during the pandemic, like really drawing out some of those statistics about what you've been able to do throughout this and how you, again, have really become trusted allies and resources for young people and for families. Pulling in information about how after school and summer programs can really complement and reinforce classroom learning. So the hands-on nature, right? The fact that we're focused on not just academics, but the social and emotional learning, and making people feel like they're in a safe and supported space so that they really are ready to re-engage with learning. And again, to begin to rebound from the effects of the pandemic. And then bring in kind of your success stories. Part of what districts are going to be looking for is an evidence base, right? There is language in the legislation specifically around an evidence base. And we have that at the national level. We have lots of resources that can help folks with that. But you're going to want to have some data from your own local experience too, right? So you can have some stories, but you also need data to reinforce the role that programs are playing and can continue to play for young people in terms of learning and, again, social and emotional development. So some of the things you might think about as you're having conversations with district is like, all right, we have, you know, I don't know, 1 or 2 sites. I'm just making up numbers and information at this point, but could we expand and add more sites throughout a district? Really, again, relying on community partners who are near schools in high need communities in particular, or do we have enough sites? Could we expand the capacity at the sites that we already have, especially sites that, again, have been providing really high quality services? Were there programs that had to close during COVID because of space issues or some other constraints, right? And is there a way for districts to think about helping those programs reopen, or maybe, again, just kind of expand back out to kind of their previous size, because we know many programs had to kind of contract during COVID because, honestly, many times space issues as well as staff, you know, ratio issues where you couldn't serve as many young people as before. And then really just, again, this whole issue around what are the ways in which you could maybe implement new strategies around reconnecting and re-engaging students who need programs the most as we emerge from the pandemic. So as you're reaching out, I think there are questions for you to consider, right? And being ready to answer as you're having conversations with districts about who you can serve and where, and how many students that would reach, how your program can really support student recovery, how you're operating now and how you're proposing to operate differently going forward. And then of course, you're going to need to have some cost estimates ready, right? Like really beginning to map that out so you have an idea of what you're hoping to get going into this. So this is not where you open the conversation, right? But these are the kinds of questions you need to have answers to, at least in your own heads, so that when a district might, engage in a conversation with you, that you have these ideas ready to share with them and really begin a brainstorming process. So really coming at this again from that vantage point of how can we help you help young people, but also having your homework done so that you can answer some of the hard questions that might come up in the middle of that conversation. So I feel like we've covered this already. Like this is all about reaching out, doing your homework, being ready to be a resource and really being at the table as these conversations are happening at the local district. And I just want to end with some resources for everyone. So some tools to help you make the case. There are a couple of things that the Wallace Foundation has put together around the evidence base for after school and summer that could be helpful. You could use data from America After 3 p.m., right, that help make the case for why we need more investment in after school and summer programs and what the biggest barriers parents have reported to participation. You might have local level data like that yourselves. We also had some COVID and after school surveys that you could pull in, again, to make like a data case on the role that after school and summer programs have been playing throughout the pandemic. And then some of the other tools that we have to help you are at this website. So this is just a little shortened version of the full website link, but this will take you there. And we have suggested talking points for outreach to districts. We have a template letter that you can adapt for reaching out to your districts, like to schedule a meeting. We have a couple of fact sheets one specifically around after school and the other around summer. We have this research-based document on principles of expanded learning. There's a 2-pager and then there's a longer document. And we have a couple other pieces in the works right now, including like a template version of like an about our program kind of document that's framed in like the COVID relief language that could be helpful too. So we will certainly share any new resources as they get added with Holly and Nicole and the team. And you can just keep checking that website too, and those things will get added there. All right, so I think that's enough for me to spur everyone's thinking, and we can take it from there.
Thanks, Jen. Two questions that came in. Can you just clarify the grade levels that the dollars can be used for, and does it include early childhood, and does it include high school? Like, what's that full range?
So the early childhood actually is an interesting question. I'd have to go back and look at that, but it's definitely K-12, and I can skim and see if there's anything in there about early care. I'm not sure I've had that question before, but I can do that while we continue the conversation.
But it definitely includes, right, elementary, middle,
Yes.
high school, and
yeah,
right. And are you finding, one of the things when we look across Vermont is we don't have as many high school type programs that we'd like to have or should have. Do you have any thoughts on what other states might be looking at that Vermont could consider expanding?
Well, I mean, I think that point, right, around thinking specifically about Vermont barriers to participation, right? Like what's different in our state than what might be in other parts of the country, and how might these ESSER dollars help fill some of those gaps that exist here? So if high school is a space that really hasn't been funded through 21st Century or any other mechanisms, that could be a really good discussion with local districts and with your state education agency about how do we help make sure that more of our high school students have these opportunities, and then pointing to some of the examples of programs that do exist in your state and elsewhere, right? And the role that they're playing in helping with like college and career exploration, and all the other things that we know that high school programs can do for young people. I think that's exactly the kind of thinking at sort of the macro level that you all want to do a little bit together, is like, what's unique here and how can we use these dollars to fill in gaps and to address barriers that exist here that might be different in Vermont than they are in other parts of the country.
Awesome, thanks. Also, can you say a little bit about what the dollars can be used for, or is that up to our SEA or the local schools? Can it be used for transportation or staffing or supplies or building construction, or do you know
So
limitations?
the 20% for learning loss, or the 80% that districts, it varies, I guess, depending on which of these pots we're talking about. There's a really long list of allowable activities for the 80% that districts have, right? That does include some capital improvement money, includes things that you might imagine, like ventilation systems, like some of the things that schools might need to do differently as we're rebounding again from COVID, or just kind of making some upgrades so that we don't need to we're better positioned going forward, I guess is how I would describe it. So I can put a link to the legislation where you can see that long list of allowable activities. For the after school set aside, right? That's specifically for after school. And for the summer set aside, it's specifically for summer. And learning loss, again, is after school summer or extended or expanded day or year. Because of the way that this legislation was passed, the Congress didn't get to put a lot of words really in there in terms of defining what any of those things mean. So that's where we know less, I think, about exactly how the US Department of Ed and how your state agency might interpret like allowable costs related to those. So that's a place where it's like more to come. But again, we're definitely trying to shape that at the national level and encourage you to help shape that at the state level too, so that districts have as much kind of flexibility and to help them work with you all going forward.
Awesome, thank you. I think we'll do one more in this space, and they're combining two, and it's, can the funds be used for scholarships or to reduce costs to families for participation? And can they be used as well to go to an outside organization to support that partnership? So maybe it goes to the recreation department or a licensed child care center or somebody, and pays for their staffing to actually help run the programming.
Yeah, so again, I think this is a place where probably the devil is in the details, right? But in theory, the funds could, like the state education agency could set up a competition for those 1%, 1%, and 5% dollars, where like community-based organizations could apply for funding directly from the state education agency for programming. And so you can envision that funding could basically offset, offset the cost of attending. I don't know if scholarships exactly would be the way that folks would talk about it, but the intent is still the same, right? Which is like making sure that cost, which we know from America After 3 is like the top barrier to participation in programs in many places, that barrier gets eliminated. So this, I think, again, is a place where it's a great chance to use the data and what you know about the state of after school in Vermont, and then say, and here's how these new ESSER dollars can really help us fill in these gaps, overcome these barriers, help meet the needs of young people and families that we haven't been able to. From my vantage point, like when I think about making the case around like community organizations who've been providing after school and summer, if I were going into a conversation with a district, I would really try and focus on like the equity standpoint, right? And the fact that we know many districts have lost touch with a lot of young people. And those young people are often young people who are connected to the community-based organizations in their communities. And so if a district is serious about addressing equity using these dollars, these partnerships are a great way to make that happen, because these are organizations that have been working deeply in communities and have connections that maybe districts haven't had or haven't been able to maintain during the pandemic in the way that after school and summer providers have been able to.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jen, and thank you for all the information and the slides and the numbers and the data and the stage setting for us. I am going to now switch to Katerina Macias from Senator Sanders' office. As all of you know, Senator Sanders has been a huge proponent of after school and summer since way back in his political career, including starting, one of the partnership between city and school district after school and summer programs in Burlington when he was mayor there. And he has been a vocal and strong voice for what you do and for the program. So Katerina, thank you for being here.
Thanks, Holly, and hi, everyone. I want to start by extending a giant thank you from Senator Sanders to everyone in the field. Also, thank you to Holly and Jen for your advocacy work. And specifically to the providers, thank you for serving your community during a really challenging time. I cannot emphasize that enough. Your lives have been disrupted in a way that we have never seen before, and the lives of the students you serve, they're facing the same or similar challenges. I know that many of you are struggling, many of the youth you are serving are struggling. And just to emphasize everything that has been said this morning, I believe, and the senator believes, that if we work together, we can make this a really great summer for both you and the students you serve. So like Jen just went through, I won't go into all of the details like she did, but in response to the coronavirus crisis, Congress passed and President Biden signed into law the American Rescue Plan. In Senator Sanders' opinion, this is one of the most significant pieces of legislation for working families in the modern history of our country. So to go into some of what's included in this beyond after school is that the legislation increases direct payments to individuals. So that was that $1,400 payment. It extends critical unemployment benefits. It reduces child poverty by half with the expansion of the child tax credit. That was from the $2,000 credit to $3,000 or $3,600, depending on the age of your child, and ensures we're vaccinating as many people as we possibly can. So Senator Sanders is very proud for advocating for the historic investment in summer opportunities, after school opportunities, and learning recovery. This is triple the amount of funding available that we've had in the past. So Vermont is going to receive over $7 million directed to these programs. And it's hopefully our collective hope that summer programming will be exactly what you want and what you need. This money is allotted to both the Vermont Agency of Education and directly to school districts, and available through September 2023. So therefore, it requires quite a bit of collaboration to ensure that we meet the needs of the kids you serve. We are waiting on the guidance, the regulations from the Department of Education, the US Department of Education, to address this community approach and to make sure that we're meeting the needs of Vermont families. So last week, Senator Sanders hosted a student-centered town hall to hear from youth, similar to the governor's event tomorrow and what you all hear daily. Youth want a summer that meets their needs. We heard from some youth that they may want help with schoolwork. Others may want to try out a career field, play sports, participate in arts, address mental health needs, or maybe even get a full-time job. So there's a whole lot of options that youth are sort of telling us what they want. Again, you all know this. And in an effort to hear more from kids, especially high school students, Senator Sanders has created a survey. I'll put the link in the chat when I finish talking, because I'm not as terrific at multitasking, but I will share that with you all. If you're able to share it with high schoolers, we would appreciate it. And what I just wanted to end by saying today is that when Senator Sanders began pushing for this after school and summer funding in the American Rescue Plan, he wanted to talk to a Vermonter with knowledge of what's happening on the ground. So I immediately put him in contact with Holly, because I know how in touch Vermont After School is with all of you providers. And I just want to emphasize what you share with her, what you all talk with the Vermont After School staff about, what you discuss on these field calls really matters. And it's helping inform what is possible with recovery dollars. You are preparing the future of our country. You are in touch with students every day. Our children and all of you as providers deserve an unprecedented investment in summer. So once again, a huge thank you for everything you are doing, recognition that it is extremely challenging. And please know that Senator Sanders will continue to support Vermont students and the resources that they need and do everything he can in Congress to ensure that we're addressing their needs, your needs, and investing in Vermont communities. So thank you so much. And I look forward to hearing from everyone else.
Katarina, thank you. It really has been amazing to have the senator's attention on this and his intensity. He carries an incredible amount of intensity. And when he calls you and he's like, no, this has got to happen. Let's make this happen. It really makes you stand up straight. So thank you for that. And now I'd like to ask Elisa Stolberg, the director of the Maternal and Child Health Division at the Vermont Department of Health. And she's going to speak a bit about what they're seeing and thinking at the state. And I am looking for Elisa's. There you are. I have to find you on here. I don't know why I feel like I need to make that eye contact through the screen. So thank you, Elisa, for being here. Appreciate it so much.
Thank you, Holly, and thank you all. I think I said this on a previous webinar with many of you, but we are just so grateful for all that you have done this past year. And I'm so grateful both as an employee of the health department, but also as the parent of a 6-year-old who went to camp and goes to school, and it's just been life-saving for all of us. So I'm so grateful. I just wanted to talk really briefly about what we're doing at the health department and in partnership with the other state agencies around really trying to get the message out, primarily to families about this summer in support of your work and your programs. And so we're really targeting planning to target some messaging, both sort of across the spectrum to families, both of young children, of school-age children, and then also to youth themselves. And we haven't quite sort of landed on what that message will be, or even quite how we're going to get that message out, although we definitely have done a bit of planning. But I thought I could just sort of walk you through what some of those messages we were thinking about. And if you, it would be helpful, if you have thoughts that you would like us to think about in that messaging, we would gladly take your feedback. So thinking about this, we feel like the number one message, or not in any order, but the first message is really about this summer is safe. And I know you are all anxiously awaiting for the health department guidance about summer COVID protocols, and we are working on it, I promise. We're waiting on some policy decisions from the governor's office in order to move that forward. But really, summer is safe. We anticipate that the case counts are going to go down. There's more and more people every day who are getting vaccinated, including hopefully all or most of you all. And so hopefully a lot of that program will be outside, and many of you did this last summer, so you know already what those protocols are. We want people to know it's safe to come out. The health department has your back, both in supporting you in setting up your programs, but also if and when there are cases and how to handle that. And we will be there right by your side in doing that work. So summer is safe. We also want to really emphasize the importance of summer, and that summer is an opportunity, for young people to connect with those peers, some of whom who really have those pretty limited connections right now. And this is an opportunity to reconnect. It's an opportunity for some to catch up on some learning. And it's an opportunity for everyone to be able to make a transition from this year into what we hope is going to be a pretty normal operations in the fall. And so it's a really, it's a bridge between where people are right now and where we hope they can get in the following in the years to come. So we feel like that's a really important message. We don't want to underestimate how difficult it may be for some. And so we hope to support families in understanding that it may be challenging, that some days kids aren't going to want to go, and it may be challenging for you all as summer programs to be able to help young people go through that transition. And I hope that as a state, we're able to really have your back there too, in being able to support you in some of those difficulties that are going to come out over the summer, and really support families in understanding that it's not going to, that the summer may be different than past summers, and how really to address that with the young people in their lives. And also to encourage families to sign up for programs and to not be afraid of that difficulty and that challenge. And then the last message really is to help drive families to the opportunities that we're creating through this money that's going to flow into the state to support expansion and new programming. So those are kind of the key messages. Again, it's all kind of a work in progress. It's going to depend a lot on kind of the trajectory of the virus, but we're really hopeful. We have a lot of really good systems in place and guidance and support for everyone who's out there. So I will stop there. Happy to receive any feedback, answer any questions, or we can just continue the conversation as we move forward. Thanks, Holly.
Yeah, Elisa, thank you. We really are in such good hands with our Department of Health, and we have been throughout this. And I really appreciate you taking the lead on this messaging, because that is something, as we talk to programs and they're opening up, but families aren't all signing up, or, and there's so much uncertainty. So, thank you for that work that you're doing on communications and messaging. And I see a lot of heads nodding. What I think we'd like to do next, think about, let's out of all of this sort of gel in your heads, think about some questions, and we're gonna sort of take a sidestep to actually hear from some of you about what you're already planning. And I'm gonna ask Beth Chambers if she would be willing to share sort of what she's thinking about and looking at the summer up in the Northeast Kingdom, and see what ideas that might spark for some of you.
Hi, my name is Beth Chambers. I coordinate the after school and summer programs for North Country Supervisory Union. Just like Holly said, in the Northeast Kingdom, we've got 9 sites, which is a lot of principals and school staff, a lot of different people involved. And I would say that this has been the most collaborative year that we have ever had. We've been a 21C program for over 18 years. So summer has been just kind of, it exists and we know what we're doing. And sometimes we add stuff to make it even greater, but it's like a well-worn shoe. We've got it figured out. But this year we're making some changes. So we're using ESSER funds for the next 3 years to leverage our summer programs in some exciting ways. So I put together a group of 3 principals, 4 site coordinators, the assistant special education director, our equity and community outreach coordinator locally, a literacy coach, the curriculum director, and I. And we've been meeting to plan out a summer that we think is going to address kids' needs, with really the goal of not adding stigmatization to our summer, where kids are just getting pulled out of programs all the time in front of their friends. And really, and we don't want kids getting pulled away from things that they're enjoying, that make them happy and they're excited about. And then we also just didn't want this summer to be a scheduling nightmare for everybody. And that's always on the table. It's hard to schedule around, maintenance and cleaning and all these different things. And then adding new separate programs is a whole nother element. So we really wanted to focus on something that would be synchronous, even if we've got different parties involved. And so what we came up with was this 8 to 10 time period, Monday through Thursday. We run 5 weeks, and staffing has been an issue for us all year. And that's something I've heard from a lot of people in the field. We're really going to be focusing on getting Encore staff, all school staff, but also high school students is a big thing. And we're going to pay high school students $18 an hour to just throw adults into that 8 to 10 time period and run as much small group tutoring as possible. So that's 1 to 3 kids per group. And they're all going to be trained. All of the people that we hire for that 8 to 10 time period are going to have 2 days of planning in mid-June that they can come together, and they will be doing a lot of their planning based on, so every student who signs up is going to have their homeroom teacher writing out the notes of their biggest needs that need to be focused on. So when we enter into the summer program, there will be tutoring, but there will also be some kind of larger group mindfulness and other skills that that students that maybe don't have those additional needs can be in. So it's going to take a lot of planning. So we're also hiring a tutoring coordinator that's going to work in conjunction with me using those USSER funds to make sure that that we're getting kids the help that they need and not a bunch of extra stuff that they don't. The training during that 2 days is going to be done by local content specialists in our schools, as well as teacher coaches, and then the tutoring coordinator. Plans will be suggested by teachers, and the sessions are really going to look like, anywhere from special education services to counseling to, a wellness group to some exciting academic enrichment to tutoring. So it's going to be very flexible. And then our literacy coaches running an literacy institute for our literacy tutors so that they can be getting professional development after that 8 to 10 time period that they can then use in the next days or the next week. So that's been a nice collaboration as well. 10 to 4 and on Fridays is just Encore fun time. We're planning to be outdoors, high engagement, high levels of fun. We're renting inflatable water slides, and we've got the Bike Smart trailer, and we're partnering with Siskin and Coots Moriarty, Northwoods, Teach America to Swim. The local career center is using their career center students to do some different career week focuses. So they'll do little 1-hour lessons over one of our summer weeks that students will be able to come learn for that day about one element of our local career center. And then another exciting partnership is we're allowing some high school students to do credit recovery as student assistants in our programs, and our local high school is paying those students for the credit recovery. So we don't necessarily plan to use them in our ratios, but we are going to have these extra hands on deck to make sure that we have just enough people around to make things fun. And having high school students is my favorite. I used to be a high school student manager before this in a work-based learning setting. And so I want them. They've got energy. I love having them around. So it's a lot. It's a lot to pull together, but collaboration has been huge this summer, and we're really excited to see how it goes.
Thanks, Beth. I don't think you could possibly have demonstrated collaboration or working with a lot of different partners better than you just did when you rolled out. That's pretty amazing. We're going to quickly go to another part of the state, and I'm going to ask Kim Peters, who is the director of the Rutland Recreation and Parks Department, to share about their partnership in Rutland.
Well, kudos to you, Beth. I'm Kim Peters for Recreation, so we are a non-licensed recreation department. Marie Gilman's on this call. I saw she's the partner from Rutland schools, and I think for us, we're kind of going into this as how can we make this easier for the school district? Their focus is so high right now. And so again, kudos to Beth. I can't imagine the amount of work that goes into this. We've started some collaboration. We actually have a meeting tomorrow. I started to think about this a couple weeks ago and saying, we as a rec department, we have 10 parks. within Rutland City, possibly a few more. We have 4 to 5 facilities, along with obviously our schools, but how can we utilize those? So I'm going to the school district and say, how can we help you? We're good at all the fun stuff. And so some of the things that we're looking at to kind of change our paradigm and change our culture is not just having our regular summer camp program, but we're going to be utilizing our parks for recreation on the move, where we're going to be adding educational aspects to that through collaboration from nonprofits. So we're going to basically, the idea, the concept is one of our parks that is largely used by families and youth that do not typically use our services or the school services, and to set up recreation every day. We'll have food, we'll have games, but then ideally as we get more into the summer, to start offering educational opportunities, because as you offer food and things to do, then more and more people come. That's one way that we feel like we can start off simple. We're also looking at safe routes from schools to parks. So we're going to be identifying those in the next 3 weeks, along with bike safety programs and collaborating with surrounding towns and the schools. Swim lessons, is something that we do really well. We were partnering with Tapestry this year to provide swim lessons to their folks and their kids. But, I think the collaboration, and we've talked about this as rec directors, who has good, already good resources with their school districts, and how do you make those stronger? We're not coming in as the know-it-alls, because we're not, we're all figuring this out, but putting our strengths together and really figuring out where we can help. One of the programs we're going to be offering in the next 2 weeks is a literacy program based around youth theater. I'm really excited about this. Actually, the superintendent came to us with the ask, and we were able to put something together, which is strictly it's going to be fun because it's youth theater, but it's literacy. And I can provide basically the curriculum that we have that we're utilizing if anyone's interested in that. That's a way that you can collaborate easily, and the curriculum's already out there. So it's based on theater, but it's using literacy to help. So that's where we're at, but there's a lot of work to be done. There's a lot of planning, but for me, I've said, let's start simple and then let that concept grow, because other partners will jump on board and want to help any way they can, whether it's police, fire, nonprofit organizations. So let's start with some simple concepts and let them blossom. And I've already written down so many great ideas from listening to people talk. So I want to just thank you for this opportunity to hear these great ideas that we're coming up with. Thank you.
Thanks, Kim. I think you said it so well, right? About finding your strength and then who you partner with and what you bring to the table. A couple of resources of Governor Scott, who was all over universal after school before even COVID. It continues to be a strong supporter in this space. Governor's office has asked us to create a map of where all the programs are and who's offering what. So if you have not yet filled out that survey link, please do. I saw there were some questions, people trying to connect with others. When that gets up, that'll also help you see who else is in your region, who you could be partnering with, how we can really create some regional ecosystems around after school and summer and youth serving organizations. So Nicole's already got it posted, and we'll make sure we get that out to you, but please and share it with your partners. We're really trying to map any kind of program in this space so that we can really build this together. Also in April and May, we will be continuing field forums like this, April, May, and June, right? So, probably every other week or every week with different topics to try to get this type of information to you and to support you and to hear from you. We also will be doing, Tricia leads calls on Tuesdays that are about providers networking with each other. So sharing more of those stories that Beth and Kim shared, and what are you doing about this, and how are you handling busing, and what have you figured out that works. So there'll also be that sort of that working, connecting space in addition to these field forums. So Watch for those to come out. And if there are other things that you need or that would be really helpful, we have a whole schedule of professional development rolling out, including some major national speakers on burnout and equity and working with your staff. So, watch for those, line up your summer staff as you're hiring them to tag into those. Trisha's running a boot camp that you could send staff to online virtually for a week to help absorb some of that. So, we are here and we are trying to run as fast as you are and trying to keep up with all that you are doing and all that you need. So please, 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 as I said in the beginning, stay in the conversation. Please, please be in touch and know how much you are appreciated. So thank you to our speakers. Thank you to all of you. We are a few minutes over, so I apologize for that, and want to send you off into your afternoon with sunshine and joy. All right. Thank you. Take care.